Ladies and gentlemen, stormtroopers alike, welcome into this edition of the Storm Surge podcast. And while they say, BP, that one can't win them all, and a little rain must fall even during the storm, 4-1 now are the Orlando Storm against the Battlehawks there. What a time. There were plenty of high points for the Storm, but at the end of the day, they still fall short, BP.
Nope, just not enough. I mean, the first half was the difference. It was literally a tale of two halves in this game. St. Louis goes 18-0 on the Storm. The Storm had no offensive answers in that first half. Jack Plummer looked rattled. The offensive line was making far too many mistakes.
Yeah.
The run game never got established. The defense did everything they could, but didn't have the plays that they needed. And then all of a sudden, we get to the second half. So St. Louis comes out, they make the score 25-0, and then Orlando goes on the tear of a century. I mean, Coach Beckton postgame, Kyle talked about this in their fight and their the grind. You know, they made the big plays. I mean, my player of the game, if you're giving me a defensive player of the game, normally you'd give it more or less to a winner in this case. But for the Storm's sake, I'm going to give this one to Feldarius Payne.
Yes.
I mean, a 20-yard sack, and then that sets up a punt situation that, and Ricky Prohl talked about this too. He said they punted the ball. They had a penalty on Orlando, and instead of taking the field position, he's like, no, I'll listen to my special teams coach, and his kicker wanted to kick again, so he did. And he bounces it right off the back of a Battlehawks player, although Fox sounds like he might have gotten the credit for the block. It was actually not a block. It was a doink.
Yeah, Fox was the closest guy there. He got the points.
Yeah.
And listen, all the credit in the world to Coach Prohl for admitting, hey, I should have listened to my guy. I should have listened to my special teams coach, and he didn't. That was a great first impression. He left me in postgame talking about that too, for sure. And, hey, listen, credit to Harrison Frost coming in. You have a veteran quarterback, Luis Perez, coming in. It might be a little scary there for a moment. He came out and did the job he did. Granted, the Storm, Feldarius Payne and company, let's take nothing from Isaiah Buggs, and Garrett and Banks, of course, doing their thing.
Amani Bledsoe with an immediate impact coming off the trades. I mean, he was an absolute menace at times in the backfield. He did a wonderful job rushing off the edge at a couple of near sack opportunities. Frost was just quicker on the trigger, but he definitely was disruptive. And he got the tip drill interception early in the first half. That was a big game changer. So Bledsoe making an impact in this game. Tamonte Beckett making great plays in the backfield. You know, Buggs also, you know, what's up, Doc? Here he comes. You know, he was all sorts of trouble. You know, so the Storm threw everything they had at the Battlehawks. But you got to understand, too, St. Louis was coming in to play a team that's on a 4-game win streak, and you knew they were going to give us our best shot, and they certainly did. They just outplayed us in the first half, and that was a hole that they couldn't come out of. And, you know, credit to Coach Beck. I mean, even in the loss, you've got an up-tempo coach. He knows what he's got to work on. He made some errors in his play calling and situational stuff that he owns, and he did take responsibility for that. So I know he's going to go back and try to fix things. But you have to applaud the fight in the Storm offense. They came right back out, their first big drive of the third quarter, marched all the way down the field, got a rushing touchdown. Succeeding drive, St. Louis has the punt fall into the back of a player, rolls out at the 1-yard line, which is amazing because if that ball rolls into the end zone and then tails out, it's just a safety. You know, Orlando still gets the ball, but, you know, it's much more important to get the 6 out of that. They turned around. Feldarius Payne lines up in the power I.
That's so great.
Okay, if you want to talk about running the damn ball, and I hope Coach Beck listens to this, I was so freaking excited when I saw that. I said, is that Payne lining up at fullback? And dadgummit, he sure did. And he led the block that got Stewart into the end zone to score the touchdown. So
Dotson?
No. I think it was Trey Stewart. No, yeah.
Stewart was inactive.
I'm so tired. It was Elijah Dotson.
No, that's how excited you are about you saw the block. You didn't see the runner.
I didn't care who it was.
Speaking of excitement,
Elijah Dotson.
In a loss, Coach Beck, when I asked about Feldarius Payne in post, had the biggest smile. Somebody, yeah, that's fun. You know, he was all about that life too. And if I said to you about defensive big men making an impact, you got Dotson making a block on offense, and then you have Bledsoe assuring that the Storm had their first multi-interception game of the year.
Another one too, yeah. Mater's actually got that second pick, and then he came out with a hamstring, so they're watching him right now. But no, yeah, and I'm sorry, you're correct. It was Elijah Dotson that scored the touchdown off the Payne block. So I mean, just follow the big zero, Agent Zero, we're going to call him now.
Yeah.
I mean, just a tremendous play, got the crowd on their feet. How about the Storm? Kind of having a dead period with exchange possessions. They held St. Louis scoreless in the fourth quarter, so it was Orlando's game to lose at that point. They get into a situation where they kick the field goal, make it 25-17, and then they went back for the 4th and 12, which is difficult to do, but they used the UFL's possession rule. Great catch. Wiggs with a great catch over the middle. People questioned whether or not he dropped the ball. Had everybody in the stands confused, but Kyle and I were at field level when that happened, and sure enough, that was a catch.
Absolutely.
So, you got a great catch by a great wide receiver, making it in a clutch situation. That got things rolling. And, I'm going to have to go back to the film on this one. This is probably going to be a great BP breakdown this week because we're going to see where Jack Plummer kind of fell apart at the end of the game. And I know all you DTR Glazers are going to start going on, well, DTR wouldn't. No, listen. You needed to watch that Birmingham game last night because that was what you were going to get out of DTR. He's going to be here next week. You'll see it in person. You'll get what I'm talking about. Jack Plummer is your quarterback, y'all. But this was not Jack Plummer's best game.
All the DTR Glazers are over here. The only thing that DTR prevents the Stallions from doing is maybe from getting another donut. I had to make the glazed donut.
Yes, you
joke.
did. Well,
but nonetheless, here's the thing about it, BP, and I know that they're going to do all that. It's the first loss. It's the bad timing and all this other stuff. I can't get past how many positive firsts took place offensively, right?
Yeah.
The first 4th and 12 being taken care of, overcoming the first big adversity of the year. But here's another thing I think this is the most penalized the offensive line was. Oh, no, is the offensive line going to go after Razone? Yeah, I am. I think even they would tell you, BP, that this was particularly their worst game of the year mentally. Too many false starts, and you can't get beat by stunts. Now, I know they had 2 different starters in the game at left tackle and right guard, but even still, nonetheless, a stunt, if you're an O-lineman, shouldn't fool you that much. You just got to believe, and I think at that point they started, I don't want to say seeing ghosts, but they were getting a little hesitant perhaps in allowing other blitzes to come through from other parts of the front. But giving up stunts like that, listen, if I'm going to be harsh on the Jaguars when they do it, and I'm not talking about on the Duval dive, bing, I got to be fair and do the same when I see the same thing. Yeah,
well, and then you also have Cam Camper and you got Elijah Badger with the shimmy shake.
Oh my God! Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
Two other false start penalties.
2 more bullets shot into the front.
So
gosh.
Orlando, despite the success that they had in the second half, also did a considerable job shooting themselves in the foot.
Right.
So this is a discipline game for them. But like I said, you are a 4-0 team coming to this. You were playing a Battlehawks team that had lost 2 straight, and they're hungry, and they're coming into your house. And, all the talk about, that's Beck's old team, they threw that crap out the window.
Oh, my God, Hakeem Butler is so cute.
Hakeem Butler, he came, the other thing I want to know, too, and credit to St. Louis, is that they came out prepared.
Yes.
This was an organized assault, and the Storm had their first true taste of adversity. The St. Louis team, I guess, has been well established, even though that most of that coaching staff is really new now. But they have a tradition already of some success, and a lot of that was some install that already existed from the Beck era. So now, and the Prole has done a really good job getting them prepared for this, and that was a very well-oiled machine that came out and gave Orlando their best shot. So the Storm reacted really well to it. I mean, I would not feel terrible about this loss, but this is kind of what the Storm needed. They've had a couple of games where they've gotten away. Some people would say they've gotten away with it, and they converted things when they needed to. They got the points when they needed to, the clutch plays and all that stuff. But this was the first wire-to-wire game where Orlando really had to dig from out of a hole, and they came within 8. So 8. It's only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, kids. It's a loss. It's whatever. But we've talked about this earlier in the season too. It's good to learn from a win when you can find those opportunities, but nothing will get you learning faster than to learn from defeat. And I think in this league, when you've only got 10 games, one loss is not going to be the end of the world. I mean, look at DC. DC rolled last night. So I really think at this point, Beck said they have an 8-day break before they play on Sunday. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to get the bodies healed. KJ Hamler will be back next week, we're told. So one of their biggest possession receivers will be back in the lineup. They're going to have to make some decisions as to who to dress. But, Hamler will be back next week. So you're going to get some bodies rested and back in play. And I think you go back to the film and get that O-line square. Once you establish the line of scrimmage again, because Birmingham is no slouch either, on the defensive side of the ball, even though DC absolutely torched them. But again, there's an opportunity here that Birmingham is going to see this film. They're going to look at it and go, So we need to clean those things up.
We're going to try some stunts against you. We're going to make you win, and then we're going to move around and twitch on the line like we can. Senior undisciplined to make you jump. All of that is true. And here's the thing, BP, I want to add this too. There was head coach Joe Mazzulla once told me, see, I'm name dropping, and why are you mentioning basketball, Kyle? Don't worry, Stormtroopers, I'm getting there. But I made a comment once to Boston Celtics champion head coach Joe Mazzulla and said, hey, better to lose one, or learn something in a win. He said to me, not necessarily. And I think this game is that. The upside is, BP, that there is a blessing that can be learned from a lesson in this particular game where they realize they're not disciplined and they let a team that's good enough to take advantage of mistakes. Not a Birmingham. I said what I said. Sorry. Not a Birmingham-style team, but rather a competent team that's going to try to do their part to make a run out of the West for this group. And that quote from Joe Mazzulla happened at the Kia Center, where I saw Coach Becht campaigning before the Magic playoff game with Bo Outlaw and Nick Anderson. So this is just how much Coach Becht is into this. And he said how much he liked the crowd tonight. It's all working together. And I agree with Coach Becht demanding the Orlando fans, hey, listen, don't give up on them yet, okay? This is still a postseason looking team right now. Yeah, no,
again, you're still looking at a very disciplined team that was off kilter tonight. They got their best shot out of a talented Battlehawks team. These guys, Hakeem Butler, you can go on about him all night long.
And rightly so.
Yeah, exactly. But there were also a couple of things that caught my attention too, is that St. Louis made the plays when they had to.
Yep.
And Orlando had those opportunities. Cam Camper with almost the catch of the year that falls out of his hands. He makes that catch. That's a touchdown drive.
And then the high point interception in the far end of the end zone where they were trying to one-on-one Butler. Again, rightly so. St. Louis play callers, I don't blame you. And the high point interception, I forget who came down with it, if it was Michel or who it was, but the high point catch, and then as he's landing the ground, makes it bounce out of his hands, much like the other big catch you were talking about.
Yeah, and then kind of the head scratching moments where Ja'Shawn Corbin trips over his own guy and the ground causes the fumble. And the ruling is, of course, since he wasn't touched by a defensive player, the ground causes the fumble. I'm not sure how that works, but so he's not down by contact in this league.
Then there's the one we talked about.
Rolling with the great run that opens up a big first down run that they horse collar tackled him, but then he's got a finger in the face mask and the offsetting penalties, and that drags up. So many things that happened tonight that were just
unfortunate luck. Football gods being angry, self-imposed mistakes, and some injuries, and yet still a touchdown away from being involved in an overtime game.
I mean, you had opportunities and you got the 4th and 12, which was magic. So you ended up giving yourself a chance and you just didn't finish. But, these are things that this team is going to learn and they're going to move forward with. Again, the Stallions are coming to town. We've already faced them. We put a goose egg on them. So we've got a little bit of confidence. They've seen us. We've seen them. But now they've got a different quarterback. So it's a totally different flavor that DTR brings. But the good news is that the Storm kind of know what his tendencies are, and they already have some background on him. So this is going to be a lot like that Louisville game where, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, we win. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity for the Storm to bounce back, get another win under their belts, and then they go 2 games on the road, and then they come back to close out the regular season here against DC, which is probably going to be the game of the year. And that's going to be your battle between 1st and 2nd place if the Storm win out. You still got to play Dallas, and the Houston game is probably, Houston's not playing very well right now, so you can almost say that the Storm have a really high percentage chance of winning that game. It's going to be an interesting closeout to the season. But, hey, at the halfway point, looking back at it now, if you had told me this team going into the season would have been 4-1, I would have looked at you and said, okay, that's pretty doggone optimistic. And we have a lot to be optimistic about. The crowd was great tonight.
It was.
Going down field level, the energy was fantastic. And like I said, in post-game press, Becht was super positive about it. He knows he got beat. He wasn't making a lot of excuses. He accepted that responsibility.
He even blamed a few things on himself with some of the play calls.
He took the mantle of a lot of this and some of the play calling. So, credit to the team and credit to what they're doing right now. I still think this is a class act organization. And, the fans showed out tonight. even though the Magic came in and won, we still had plenty of people out here tonight. Obviously, we'd like to see more and more, but the wall was energetic.
There were some Magic jerseys.
There were some people that came over to the Kia Center. So, and congrats to the Magic, winning Game 3. That's huge. They need to win Game 4, put the pedal to the metal, get the knockout punch to Detroit, and then more people can spill in over here. So, I'm not depressed about this. Obviously, we're disappointed. It was not the outcome we wanted. We saw that last 2 minutes down at the field level. We were ready to start yelling. But, I think we should pack it up and take this for what it is, and then we'll get ready for Birmingham and hopefully come out with a dub.
Where hopefully BP will see them run the damn ball. And then since they don't have Bledsoe anymore, maybe they can keep running the damn ball.
I love it.
So with that in mind, here at Interco Stadium Live, this is Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Thank you, Stormtroopers. This is BP as well. Make sure you catch the next one. We got a lot more cool stuff in the works coming out here. We'll be talking more about that soon. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed. Fight back. Fight back.